Thank you for flying our airline. We'll be taking off shortly. To ensure we deliver great customer service, we require all passengers to follow these helpful rules. Stay seated when the seatbelt light is illuminated. Should you stand up, we will be forced to tie you down to the seat with zip ties. Should you take more than one cookie, you will be repeatedly slapped by the air marshal until you put it back. Also, never make eye contact with the flight attendants. Ever! Looking at attendants or asking them for anything will result in the immediate dismissal from the flight at 37,000. And when we land, anyone rushing down the aisle to beat 3 people out the door shall be beaten with a bag of peanuts. Thank you and have a great flight.
Well, it's still better than riding Amtrak.
Do you live, eat, and sleep the hotel industry? Looking to brush up on your game? You've come to the right place. Welcome to No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast, with your host, Glenn Hausman.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the show, No Vacancy, with me, Glenn Hausman. I'm so delighted you are joining us here once again for another great show, taking us through the world of hospitality and travel. Make sure you follow me at Traveling Glenn on Twitter. There's a couple of G's there in a row, a couple of N's there at the end, and you'll get notified when new shows are posted and all the exciting things that are happening here in the No Vacancy community, as well as news and information that you need to know to make sure that your world is a little bit brighter and better every single day. Be sure to watch all of my videos at Here to Stay TV. You can find that right now on YouTube at Bridge Street Global Hospitality. And listen, what do I have to do to get you to like this show on iTunes and leave a review? I've got some more recently, and I'd like to get even more. You know, that kind of stuff helps me. Helps me get great advertisers, helps me get great people involved in listening to the show every single week. Coming up after this little bit, I get to speak with Michael Taylor of J.D. Power, and we're going to talk all about the airline business. The airline business lately is becoming under lots of fire out there. Of course, you know why. The airlines seem to hate their traveling customers these days, kicking a lot of them off flights. But we're going to talk to him about, believe it or not, how the airlines are contributing to a steady improvement in customer satisfaction here in the United States. Yep, the study found that lower fares, better on-time performance, fewer lost bags, and this is the funny part, the lowest bump rate ever recorded is helping them make that improvement. So you're going to want to stick around after the commercial break for that. And speaking of commercials, let me tell you a little bit about Kevin Barry Fine Art. You can find them at kevinbarryfineart.com. And these guys are absolutely great. Be sure to check out my standalone show with the good folks over at Kevin Barry Fine Art. They do all sorts of art, taking it way beyond just what you think art should be. Great public installations, amazing things. I was in Las Vegas a couple of weeks ago, and I saw their 3D installation at the Oriole restaurant. I know you guys know that place, the famous wine bar, the Wine Angels that go up and down that giant wine tower. Did all the artwork around it. It looks absolutely fabulous. I know you guys are going to want to talk to them, engage them, because they can help create a sense of place, a sense of experience in your hotel. That's kevinbarryfineart.com, 310-879-5638. Be sure to check that out. All right, so I'm taping the show the same day as it's being released. That'd be May 19th, 2017. And yesterday I went into Manhattan on a terribly hot and sweaty day, and I went to the Best Western Leisure Travel Summit. I had a really great time at that event. I go every year. This was the 9th time they've done it, and I find it to be a great way to kick off the summer season. I get a good sense of what's going to be happening in regards to summer travel, where we are from a leisure perspective, and it really helps bring me a little bit balance in my life. Some really great people there, including, of course, Dorothy Dowling, SVP and Chief Marketing Officer with Best Western Hotels and Resorts. So some of the things I learned out there: most importantly, what is going to be happening next week when it comes to tourism for Memorial Day? Well, it looks like it's going to be one of the best years that we've seen in a very, very long time. In fact, expect that 39.3 million Americans are going to be traveling 50 miles or more away from home this Memorial Day weekend. That's a million more than last year, and creating the highest Memorial Day volume of traffic since 2005. And this is even with gas prices starting to go back up. I got to tell you, this gas price thing always kind of annoys the heck out of me. You know, I gotta tell you. I still don't understand how the correlation between gas prices and people leaving home or not matters. Yeah, gas prices are up this year, but they were so crazy low last year, they're still super low this year compared to years in the past. So I don't understand why they say, hey, gas is going to cost more, but people are still traveling, when the fact of the matter is gas is pretty freaking cheap all around. So I don't understand how that's going to happen. All right, here's some statistics for that Memorial Day holiday travel period, which this year is being defined as Thursday, May 25th to May 29th. So 2017 is the third consecutive year of growth in Memorial Day travel, with 2.7% more travelers traveling than last year, according to AAA. That's 34.6 Americans will drive to their destinations. That's 2.4% more than last year. And 2.9 million Americans will be flying, which is an incredible increase of 5.5% over last year. So be sure, if you don't have pre-check, get to the airports early and make sure you don't carry too many bags on the plane. Those things are filling up like crazy, and you definitely don't want to be part of the next big viral video sensation by bringing too much on, not being able to fit it into a bin, starting to have an altercation with the flight attendants, getting beaten up, getting dragged out, and then being on the evening news. We don't want to have any of that happen. So as far as that, fly safe. Now, if you're driving, be aware that those gas prices are going up. Today's average gallon is $2.34. It's 11 cents more than last year. So the way I see it, this is why I don't think I understand why people, stop traveling when gas prices go up. 11 cents more than last year. Let's say my car has 15 gallons in it. So we're talking $1.60-ish or so more per tank of gas. That's going to keep me going away on a family vacation or going to see friends for Memorial Day weekend. I think I got bigger problems than the extra $1.50 or so that it's going to give me a cost. So this is why I don't really get what's going on there. Also, large increases in flying and travel by other modes are happening this year. People are not only flying and driving, they're riding the train or the bus or even taking a cruise. So that's kind of pretty cool this year. That's going to be up 2.9% to 1.75 million Americans out there. So expect a great time over there in, traveling for Memorial Day. I don't know what you guys are going to be doing. I'm really looking forward to getting my smoker out. Gonna hopefully make myself a really delicious rack of ribs, and hopefully you guys will come on over. Yeah, that's right. Stop by my house. I got the pool. It'll be open, and we will enjoy the Hausman Resort Pool Club and Smokehouse. Will be back in action all summer long. If you want to join the Hausman Pool Club, Smokehouse, and resort, you can find me at Traveling Glenn, and we can talk all about it. Maybe you can come over. Maybe you can come and visit. That'll be a lot of fun. All right, so back to what was happening over at the Leisure Travel Summit. One of the things that I found most interesting is that Greg Staley, Senior Vice President of Communications with the U.S. Travel Association, acknowledged that while domestic tourism is up, he said that we're in the driver's seat with that. Inbound tourism is softening. And I'm, wondering what's going on with that inbound tourism number. Those numbers are going to start to reveal themselves over the next couple of months. I know some people have been giving me flack, but I've been saying because I feel that the new administration has rolled up the welcome carpet, Europeans and folks from other continents are going to be less interested in visiting the United States. And my biggest fear for 2017 is that is going to play out correctly. Well, it's going to play out in the way that I suggested it's going to play out in 2017. So hopefully I'm going to be wrong on this one, and international visitors are going to really, really want to come to the United States. If there's a severe softening on inbound tourism, I think I'm going to take the family down to Orlando, go hit some of those theme parks, since those lines won't be a little too long. I mean, next week, Avatar Land, the World of Pandora, opens up at Animal Kingdom theme park in Orlando at the Walt Disney World complex. So, maybe I'll be able to get on that without a 5-hour wait, which would be really, really nicely over there. So, wage growth is up as well, according to Mr. Staley from the U.S. Travel Association, and it's up 4% this year in the first 4 months alone, which he says bodes very well for summer travel season. In fact, Dorothy Dowling over at Best Western said they're seeing a 7% increase from last year for bookings at the summer season at this time of the year, which is the most important season for Best Western, which of course is known for housing people during their great summer vacations as well. So I thought that was interesting. I thought that was fascinating. And also, Mr. Staley was talking about how travel is not necessarily a luxury for baby boomers. They want to do it. This is something that I've been saying for years, right? That we need to stop thinking exclusively about millennials. Sure. We love them. They're great. I love you, millennials. You're awesome. Let's hang out together. Let's have a beer. But listen, if you own hotels, don't forget about those baby boomers now that we're entering summer travel season, right? Not only are they going to travel together, but they're going to be paying for their kids. They're going to be paying for their grandkids, and they are going to spoil their family. That means spending money in your hotels, helping you make money. Now, of course, the millennials are going to be traveling as well, but, what we all know about them, they value experience over possessions, and they're going to find ways to hit the road and cut costs as needed, says the U.S. Travel Association. They're prioritizing health and leisure and travel rather than buying cars and homes. So they don't want things, they want experiences. Hey, what else is new? And you got folks like me, slam dunk right in the middle of that Gen X generation. That's me. Don't you forget about me, as I like to say, that great song. That kind of wrapped up my childhood there from the Breakfast Club. Which character of the Breakfast Club do you think you would be? That sounds like something I'd read on Facebook, but I don't know. How did you guys identify yourselves? I think when it came to the Breakfast Club, I probably identified myself as the geek, although I did not have problems building a birdhouse, all right? Just let me get that out there. I built a pretty darn good birdhouse when I was only 12 years old, not high school, 12 years old. I built a birdhouse. It was a masterpiece. Since then, I have not built a thing because I don't think I'm capable of it. But then I did it. So, who do you identify with there? Let me know at Traveling Glenn or send me an email, glenn@rouse.media. So, all right. So what we're also seeing right now is pretty good employment growth right there. So overall, the American economy is doing great. Now, before you get too excited over there, I think the American economy has been picking up nicely and steadily for a number of years now, and we're still bearing the fruits of that success. But within the next year, I'm getting a little concerned that we're going to start to reach a peak with employment, and the numbers are going to start going down right now. So another thing that's happening on Capitol Hill this week, besides all of the fun stuff that we're watching on the evening news, the American Hotel and Lodging Association got out there, and they were doing their annual lobbying session with members of the Congress. And we'll get more into that next week as I get some reports, because that's just wrapped up yesterday. But it looks like people had a successful time. But I did want to point out that travel in America, the impact of it is $2.3 trillion. That's direct spending and indirect spending, and 1 out of 9 American jobs are supported by travel. So make sure that when you're out there promoting travel in your world, if you're a hotelier, if you're a business traveler, that you talk about how important it is and critical to the American economy. Another American economy thing that's really important is our infrastructure that we have to worry about. And that was an issue talked about by Bill Sutherland, the VP of Travel Services at AAA, during the Best Western Leisure Travel Summit. His whole idea is we really need to get our act together when it comes to our infrastructure. This is going to be shocking news to you guys. Apparently our airports suck. That's right. Compared to places like Asia, our airports suck, right? I go to LaGuardia all the time. I cry that I have to go to LaGuardia all the time. They are trying to reinvent that airport right now. It's going to be a painful 5-6 years, but if I know the way our government in New York works, it'll be another 10-12 years before that project is done. And our roads also suck as well, so hopefully when our government will get our act together when it comes to our infrastructure and be able to create it. Now, the U.S. Travel Association is going to be coming out very shortly with an aviation blueprint, as they're calling it, which is a way to modernize all of these airport issues. They believe that capacity can be handled, airports can be handled, all the roadways going to and from airports and around the country can be fixed. So I'm looking forward to that. And the other big issue that I saw, or that they talked about, was workplaces are increasingly recognizing time off as a way to attract and retain employees. Remember how I mentioned just a minute ago how great employment is and how many jobs we're adding? Our unemployment levels, or at least those participating or wanting to participate in the employment pool, is down to 4.8%, I believe it is, which is a pretty historically low kind of number out there. So what that means is people are finding that they can skip around from company to company. We're in that cycle right now here in the hospitality industry. I don't know if you guys have noticed it out there, but I know I've noticed it every single day. I'm getting an influx of press releases about folks that are changing jobs and hopping from one company to another. We're seeing a lot of major players go from one group to another, and you know why they're going. They want to be able to have better benefits. They want to have a better salary. They want to have a better title. And we're right now where people are feeling confident in themselves, in the economy, and in the businesses that they go to. So what's going to happen there is everyone's rates of employment, price to buy them off at. I said buy them off at. The pay them at is going to be continuing to rise, which is why we're seeing the first 4 months we've seen such a big bump, is I think because of that shuffling from job to job. And that is important because people love to take time off. Not that we ever do it. I think the most time off most of me and my industry friends are on airplanes, right? You get that few hours to kind of hang out and watch a movie and hopefully be disconnected for a little while and make things happen. Okay, so the last big story that I want to talk to you today about is Best Western Hotels and Resorts did a co-branded hotel loyalty program study with U.S. News and World Report, which I thought was a very, very interesting insight by them. So they released it yesterday at the summit, and they shared their data-driven insight in how today's travelers make their loyalty program decisions. All right, so this was based on 1,000 people, and they asked some important questions like, if points are earned, why should they expire? What are their favorite program parts? And, trust, all of that kind of good stuff. So what did they find? So based on the results of the co-branded study, the ability to earn points that never, ever, ever expire is a key benefit to loyalty programs, right? So when asked if travelers find most frustrating about loyalty programs, 1/3, 1 in every 3 people said expiring points is their biggest pet peeve. That's compared to 19% for program complexity, the way to ability to increase status and other things, and 16% for annoying blackout dates or lack of free night availability. So I think that's interesting. Of all the brands surveyed, apparently only Best Western offers points that don't expire. That's going to be a pretty important lesson for me because I've got points with a lot of different companies around the country, so I better get using those immediately, or else I might lose them. Also, loyalty programs, free nights. People love themselves some free nights, especially when it comes to vacations. Not a surprise, 86% of respondents use earned points to book hotel stays, and 63% agree that free night redemption is the most appealing loyalty program feature, while 95% state that rewards programs are a key influencer to their booking decisions. Well, of course, that makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, if you're not getting the free nights, what's the point? I mean, business travelers all around the country travel all year long. And what do they want? They want to be able to reward their spouse and their kids with a great vacation in a great location. Why? Because it'll make everyone happy. If you're married to somebody that's a road warrior, you make a lot of sacrifices in your life. And it's really tough. So I would recommend using those points for overnight stays. Of course, not a surprise. All right, so the last thing, it's the importance of a brand you can trust. All right, so brand loyalty programs are becoming more competitive, and travelers are relying on fewer programs, according to the survey. I don't know if I agree necessarily on that particular factoid. The way I see it is people are joining every single loyalty program that they can, So maybe the word relying is the clue there, that they are loyal to particular loyalty programs in a much smaller group than just having all the cards. But anyway, 44% of respondents felt trust in a brand offering great service was the number one loyalty program feature when booking a hotel. And another 19% said having hotels in locations where they travel is important. Of course, that makes a whole lot of sense, and I get it. All right, so Best Western Rewards is probably did this in conjunction with the fact that they have recently refreshed their program. And now Best Western says they're the only loyalty program where points never expire, and they offer the lowest free night redemption threshold in the industry. So congratulations to Best Western with being able to say that, which is always pretty cool. And also thanks to J.D. Graves, managing editor of Brand Fuse at U.S. News and World Report, for her participation in this survey. So she also said, to give one last quote, the best programs offer travelers opportunities that interest them, are simple and meaningful. And I think that's something the hotel industry at large can learn from and experience. So that makes a lot of sense. I want you guys to stick around after the commercial break, because we're going to be talking to Michael Taylor of J.D. Power all about what's going on in airlines, in the airline industry, how come people like it more, and why beatings aren't affecting their why beatings are not affecting, people's desire for the airlines. My hypothesis, you'll hear it coming up right after this break, but I think loyal travelers are being treated better than ever, and it's those folks that rarely travel, that don't understand the system, that haven't learned all the tricks of the trade. They're the ones that are having the biggest problems. They're the ones causing the biggest problems, and they also don't know how to handle a drink. Thanks for listening, and we'll be right back after this message.
Have a question for your host, Glenn? Tweet him now at Traveling Glenn. No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast. We'll be right back.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for listening to the No Vacancy podcast with me, Glenn Hausman. You're listening to this right now. That's right, right now. You're listening. But you're not the only one. Many others are too. So my question is, do you want to get noticed? Guess what? I can help you with that. Every single month, my content delivers more than 100,000 impressions. I know. I thought the same thing too. Now it's your time to get you or your product, service, or brand known by leveraging my network. I'll work with you to find creative solutions that are going to get your message to the ears and eyes that you need to attract. Just send me a note at glenn@rouse.media or find me on Twitter at travelingglenn. That's glenn@rouse.media, ROUSE.MEDIA. And while we're at it, Glenn has got 2 N's. Thanks for listening, and now back to more great content.
Back to the show. It's No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast, with your host, Glenn Hausman.
Air travel, it's one of those things that we all love to hate. I can't tell you how many times I've been at the airport, cursing airplanes out there, but I find really, I got to get to a place. So it's fun to make fun of them, and they really do a great job in the whole scheme of things. And you know what, guys, one of the things that I can't stand is how often we love to complain about airlines. But then again, I feed into that all the time, because it's hard to for me to go into an airport without me making fun of airplanes, airports, anything airport related. I'm not sure if I like to do just for comedic purposes or just because they are stinky at what they do. But I have with me Mr. Michael Taylor, travel practice lead at J.D. Power, and he is going to correct me on all of these things, why airlines are doing so great these days and why people like them. Michael, how are you, sir?
I'm doing very well, Glenn.
Well, thank you so much for being with me. I've had some good talks with J.D. Power before. We've never had the chance to get on the microphone with each other, and I'm looking forward to hearing all about your 2017 North American Airline Satisfaction Study, which was released last week. And I'll tell you, Michael, some of the results here surprised me. Why don't you tell me a little bit about, what your major findings are, and we can kind of go from there.
Well, the 35,000-foot view, to use that phrase in this context.
Wait, but let me cut you off right there. I'm sorry.
Sure.
I get tired of people saying 30,000-foot view or 35,000-foot view when I'm usually flying at 37,000 feet. I'd like very much to,
say 37,000.
Yeah, I'd like to get a little bit more accurate with those numbers. Sorry.
Just change the texture just a little bit. So 37,000-foot view.
Thanks for being a good sport, Michael.
Yeah, that's quite right. Things are actually getting better, and they've really been on the increase since about 2012. It's kind of been an uninterrupted increase in satisfaction with air travel. And really, all the signs point to this is an industry that's getting its act together. Now, that's not to say that everybody is completely satisfied.
No.
It is actually one of the lower rated, in fact, it is the lowest rated travel experience, part of the travel experience.
Yeah, of course.
Hotels rate higher, rental cars rate higher, many airports actually rate higher than the actual aircraft experience itself. Right. And that might be just because of the nature of the beast. Really, this is the part of your life where you have a very hard deadline to meet. And that becomes very stressful for people. I always say that if you're 2 hours late, your rental car is going to be there, or another one is going to be available immediately.
That's right.
Upon your arrival. Hotel room, it's going to be there till midnight at least for you. But if you're 20 minutes late to that aircraft, it is gone.
Yeah.
And now it's going to cost you.
Yep.
And that causes a lot of stress. It's also an environment where you are supposed to follow the rules to the letter. Sit down, close your laptop, put your tray in the upright and fixed locked position. And that's not something that people have experienced in any other part of their life. So traveling on an aircraft is somewhat restricting and somewhat stressful for people in general, especially with that traveler who is rather an infrequent traveler. I assume that you're like me. You do an awful lot of traveling. There's not a month that goes by you don't take a couple of trips somewhere.
As a matter of fact, I think I'm going to be hitting platinum status within the next couple of weeks, which is never a good thing in June.
Yeah, so we just become inured to these kinds of things. We kind of expect the little hiccups along the way, but that infrequent traveler, or we also do track the people who fly an aircraft for the first time, an airline for the first time, not the first time flight, but just the first time being on Delta or first time being on Frontier or whatever it might happen to be.
Right.
And they just don't have the expectations that you and I do. So little things make them upset.
So kind of like where you and I might go into the situation expecting things to suck, or at least understand what some of the challenges, the inherent challenges to air travel are, we're probably likely to be a lot more forgiving. I'm at the point now in my life where if I have a delay of an hour or two, you just kind of roll with the punches. Maybe if it's the right time of day, go get yourself a beer at the bar. But if you're an infrequent traveler, it's going to be magnified, I would say.
Right. And they do tend to worry about things that you and I, as a seasoned traveler, just wouldn't think much more than twice about.
Right.
These videos that you see, the viral videos that you see on the news lately, do have an impact on reputation for the industry, and people's expectations of how they're being treated. But what you find at J.D. Power, we interview 11,000 travelers a year about their airline experience. And they find it's actually more pleasant. And some of the metrics that the DOT collects support the same findings that we have.
Right.
The price of an airline ticket, that's the heaviest weighted item in people's satisfaction.
Of course.
That's dropped to an average of $349. That's down 8.5% versus a year ago, I believe.
That's pretty interesting to me, because in my personal experience, I feel as if the rates are going up to fly in general.
It might be depending on where you're going. The mathematical models that airlines employ are vast and very complex.
I know. That's why you never want to ask the guy next to you how much he paid for the seat.
Right, exactly. And it's like, how come it cost me $500 to travel in Indianapolis and $140 to go to Chicago?
Yes.
And it's all based on demand and what kind of aircraft they're going to be flying and how much money they need to make that route profitable. Because if the route's not profitable, it disappears. So you'll never get services to Peoria, Illinois from New York City, for example.
Right.
So anyway, but that was the biggest, heaviest factor, was cost. So people thought they were getting more value for the money. Our satisfaction index is on a 1,000-point scale. And the price, no matter what we're talking about, whether it's a hotel room, a rental car, a beer at the bar at the airport, when somebody has to part with money,
Right.
that's generally rated lower. But the current score is 663 for what we call cost and fees. That is the cost of the ticket, any fees you incurred for like bag charges or buying Wi-Fi or whatever you wanted, or buying a meal on some aircraft. That's at 663. That's the highest it's ever been in 13 years.
Wow. So
people do feel they're actually getting better value for the money. Now, the total dollar, the actual dollar charge is a little higher than it was 6 or 7 years ago, but that's not counting inflation. So once you count inflation, it's actually a fairly decent
I understand.
deal.
It's kind of like how it's still cheaper to fly today than it was in the 1970s when inflation is
exactly
put in there. So when you're talking about these lower costs, Michael, what makes me curious is, does this mean that the airlines, what is it, the term, disintermediating their costs and breaking it all down, is that actually a good thing in terms of customer perception? Because we all love bashing it online.
Right. No, it's actually negative still. We've had bag fees, for the most part, for the last 6 or 7 years. And so there is a difference. When someone's asked or being charged for a bag, that does lower their satisfaction by a couple hundred points.
Yeah.
But that gap is narrowing over time because people are just expecting it.
Yeah.
And as we were talking about that infrequent flyer, that really makes a big difference. One of the big reasons why JetBlue, actually lost for the first time in 11 years in our study is because a year and a half ago they instituted a bag fee.
Right.
And that's just something that their traveler didn't expect. Or they thought, okay, they're like Southwest, bags fly free, and now they're charging me for bags. They're going along with all the big legacy carriers in that respect and just trying to get extra dollars out of me. And believe me, there are a lot of extra dollars in bag fees. That is a major source of profitability and revenue. Oh, yes. It's in the billions of dollars every year. So it's hard to walk away from that. But, that helped Southwest, where bags currently still fly free, secure that top spot by just 4 points. Last year was neck and neck. The JetBlue held on to the top spot for 10 years in a row or 11 years in a row by 1 point. This year they're just below Southwest by 4 points.
It makes me wonder, Michael, if us frequent travelers, our satisfaction is increased because we don't pay those baggage fees, for example. So I'm wondering, because they charge baggage fees, we feel better about ourselves and the experience in general because we don't have to pay a lot of those fees.
Yeah, you do feel smarter when you avoid those kinds of things. That's just general. That's just human nature. One of the things we tell our clients at J.D. Power is you can work with human nature or work against it. One way is much easier than the other. And so so when you could avoid that fee, but that brings up the next topic, which is the not necessarily unintended consequences, but the consequences of charging for bags means that the overhead bins get full faster because people are carrying on as much as they possibly can.
Yep.
And that's bumping up again as it's actually the second most cited problem. The biggest one is comfort of seat, which is also driven by another factor, another kind of extraneous factor, which is load factor, which currently stands around, I think, 84.6, I believe, percent. So meaning about 85% of the seats on an average flight are full. And that's up from the 70s or so, about 8 or 9 years ago.
Yeah.
Which is, if you're operating an airline, that's what you want.
Well,
if you're operating a restaurant, your business strategy is not to have empty tables. Is to have the tables filled. Same thing with airlines. You want to have those seats filled. But that means that free real estate that you were getting before when the empty seat was, or the middle seat was empty, is gone now. And you're going to have, you're constantly worrying about where your elbow is in relation to the other traveler. And that makes things a little bit more, less relaxing and a little bit less comfortable. And that's driven when we track these problems that people report on their flights, comfort of the seat is the number one complaint, followed by lack of overhead bin storage.
Right. Which makes me think, if Spike TV, if you're listening, maybe you could do armrest war TV series. I think that might make for a good show.
Yeah, there does seem to be kind of a weird kind of set of rules. Who gets what part of the armrest, and So I often wonder about that, which might lead into our, in a weird way, our next topic, which is the second heaviest factor is in-flight services.
Right.
And it's rather boring to sit in a skinny aluminum tube flying through the air at 37,000 feet for 4 or 5 or 6 hours.
Right.
And one of the things that has happened in the last 6-7 years is that technology has been applied. JetBlue really started this whole thing with having the live TV in the seat.
Yeah, and when they first started, that was transformational for me. I mean, it was great, not just to watch movies, but to watch live TV on an airplane was spectacular.
You could watch ESPN as much as you want. So, that entertaining you, keeping your mind off the flight and how boring this is to sit and stare in one direction through 4 or 5 or 6 hours, depending on where you're flying, that helps a lot. And the technology being applied to aircraft, they haven't really achieved the full potential yet. There's still a lot of retrofitting to do, and then it's a very expensive proposition, as I'm sure you know.
Yes.
You take an aircraft out of service for a day, that costs an airline tens of thousands of dollars of lost revenue. And if you're a complicated airline like American or Delta or United, where you have a whole range of aircraft, and these Wi-Fi systems is not a one-size-fits-all type of thing. You've really got to be able to get the correct technology on the aircraft. And the other part of it has been the technology has been changing so fast that once you got something in, 2 years later, it's out of date and it's obsolete, and the people your Android can't connect, but your Apple can.
Yeah.
And so they're constantly fighting against that. So when do we do it? How do we do it?
Right.
Which is another interesting thing. We're going to see in the next couple of years with American Airlines an interesting experiment, which is their Boeing 737 MAX aircraft. I believe they're going to take about 89 or 90 of them over the next few years from Boeing. They are not going to have a screen in the back of the seat.
Right.
Because they feel that you are going to bring your own screen with you.
Yep.
And now it'll be up to you to connect to that Wi-Fi system and watch a movie or TV or whatever on your laptop, on your tablet, on your cell phone or your smartphone. And that's kind of a big gamble to do that. And if you've flown on any of the new A321s from JetBlue, you can see that they have the latest. I don't think it's an OLED screen. I have to check on that, but it is definitely an upgrade from the previous screen that they had on the Airbus A320. And so, JetBlue has made. They put their chips on one pile, and American is putting some of their chips on another pile, and that's really going to be interesting to see how that affects people's perceptions of how pleasant the flight would be.
It sure does. I mean, I see, and I think Delta is playing both sides of it. I see larger screens now on some of the retrofitted aircraft, but they also have the Delta Studio, which is great because I could use my own device to stream stuff.
So those are the two big factors. Those make up about 40% of satisfaction. Is just the fact that how much value am I getting for that ticket to get to Peoria or Chicago or Indianapolis, and then am I entertained on the way there? Right. And so those are about 40% of satisfaction.
And it seems like for the frequent travelers, they are getting more benefits. And I keep going back to Delta because that's my airline of lack of choice or whatever it is.
Do you live in Atlanta?
No, I live in New York. But they've really, as you are aware, but my listeners may not know, they really made a conscious effort about 5 years ago to take over the New York market and have a great series of flights from both JFK and LaGuardia. And for me, it just makes the most sense based on my schedule and where I go to use those guys, right? So I think that they're doing a great job at upgrading the stuff that we get. I love the new Comfort Plus seats that they have, for example, or whatever they're calling it this week, and that they give you upgraded snacks and free drinks if you want that too. I think that goes a long way to satisfying the frequent traveler.
Yeah, you had mentioned before, I think the term we were looking for was disaggregation.
Okay. Thank you for correcting me.
That's quite all right. How much is the passenger willing to pay for each part of the experience? And, there really is, that's an interesting proposition from where we sit at J.D. Power, which is one of the things that you find when you do these studies is people choose their own satisfaction levels or expectations based on the price they're paying. Right. So for me, I'm Mr. Cheap. I don't care about the food. I don't care about the, extra leg room. I just want to get there on time. That's my key thing. And so I don't spend anything for that at all. In fact, I was famously asked by by Dave. Well, not famously. It's famously for me in my own experience. We were talking about flying. Having a discussion with Dave Power, our founder, and I was saying, well, I went to Tokyo and I paid what was $1,200 round trip or something like that. He goes, $1,200, Mike, how did you get a business class seat for $1,200 out of New York? I said, because I didn't fly business class. I'm pretty cheap. I said, I'm pretty cheap with your money, Dave.
Yeah.
Because I don't really care. To me, I don't really care. It doesn't make that much of a difference to me. And
not for the dollars that it costs to upgrade from one seat to the other. It's crazy.
Right. Yeah. Now, if I'm going to Australia,
that's different.
I definitely want to be in a higher class because that's 28 hours of invested time. Right there.
Yeah, I flew to China in a super economy class all the way in the back of the plane. That was not fun. I think the only thing worse than that was flying back.
Right. And, some aircraft are really nice. The A380s are great even when you're back in the back of the bus.
I'm
and that's
dying
a pretty
to fly
big
one
bus.
of those.
Yeah. Yeah. And I actually enjoy that seat. So it isn't worth it to me to upgrade to business class in that kind of aircraft.
Right. Right. Interesting. Now, one of the things that I find frustrating is if you have a problem, I don't necessarily feel that the airlines respond in a manner that's quick enough to my liking, and I'll often take to social media to try to get them to respond. What are people thinking in regards to social media and travel?
Well, there's several interesting findings. We've been asking social media questions for the last 2 years. We may have been a little bit late to the party, but at least we're trying to catch up. So there's a couple things that happen. We found out that the business traveler is more likely to post on Facebook and Twitter than the leisure traveler, which was kind of surprising to us. And the second thing we asked them, one of the other things we asked them, is was your comment positive or negative? And 74% of those people said their comments were positive, kind of reflecting what we're talking about now. It's not as bad as you might think. And people think, well, people only using social media to complain. They're actually
I would think that.
Social media to say, hey, I had a great time. Now, it might be I had a great flight. I arrived here in Atlanta on time, and, that's kind of indirect, but I didn't have any problems. The airline didn't cause me any problems and make me unhappy.
Right.
So there's that. And then the other part of social media, if there is a problem and you post on social media, it is a huge help from the airline's perspective to just respond to that person on Facebook or Twitter saying we're sorry you had that experience. How can we make it better? That causes a jump of like 180 points in satisfaction on that 1,000-point scale, which is huge. And if they solve the problem, it's like a 273-point jump in satisfaction. So these airlines who invested with people to respond to the social media comments when they're going and scraping those things, that really does pay off in satisfaction, improved satisfaction, and one would think loyalty to that airline. The airline listened to my problem and did something about it. And that's what everybody wants to have happen.
That's so true. I get survey after survey after survey every single time I fly, and they want me to respond to it. And then I used to respond to them for a long time, but they never acknowledge at all that I'm participating in that, and they've really turned me off because of that. So if you guys are listening out there, at least send us a note saying, hey, thanks so much. And I'll put in, if they say anything else, I'll put in some, horrible language along the lines of, you guys never listen to this. I think that this is, such a joke that you're asking me opinions, and then you just never hear back from them at all. So to me, that's frustrating.
Yes, and that is true. When you do get ignored, at least the folks in our survey, the 11,000 people we asked, when they do get ignored, they don't like it either.
Yeah, do you find that people vacillate between loving and hating as opposed to just being meh in the middle?
No, we talk about bifurcation occasionally. Who responds to these surveys? It's the people who had a great time, the people who had a horrible time. Right. So there's kind of it's called asymptotic. If you really want to know the technical term.
What's the name of that again?
Asymptotic.
I really like that word.
No, sorry, it's I'm using the wrong words. Somebody's going to correct me. It's not asymptotic. I'll have to think of what the.
Well, it looks like neither of us know the right words these days.
Right. Exactly. My high school teachers would be ashamed of me right at the moment.
Join the club.
So, kurtosis. Excuse me. The term is kurtosis. There we go. I knew it would come to me eventually.
Another great word.
Yeah. And that, is, do people respond to these surveys because they had a great time or a bad time? And it really, the way we do it at J.D. Power is we contract with several services who develop sample. They're professionals at maintaining good sample sources. And these people agree to take a certain number of surveys a year. It's not going to be just for J.D. Power. It could be on anything. It could be on underarm deodorant or dog food or buying a car or taking an airline flight. And so they don't really know what the topic is going to be from month to month.
Right.
And then our sample providers go back and check with these people saying, did you buy dog food? Did you buy a car? Did you take an airline flight last month? And if they don't match, they get thrown out of the sample.
Right.
So we kind of get a real good cross section. The sampling program that we have works really, really well. And we find that there's sort of a bell curve. Most people are in the middle, but they do tend to be skewed a little bit to the right, meaning that they're a little happier, and that skewness is progressively moving farther to the right, meaning they're happier than they were last year and the year before in incremental amounts. So the industry is actually getting better at serving their customer.
Now, one of the things that the industry has not been doing very well is getting control over the situation with these bumpings and the videos related to it. Now, my feeling is that it's though there's some problems out there, the issue in general is pretty much irrelevant. I fly enough to know that people usually don't get bumped, and if they do, they walk away pretty happy with some sort of remuneration. How is J.D. Power seeing it?
Well, that you are exactly right. You're very prescient.
Thank you. We should just call this segment vocabulary with Michael and Glenn.
I enjoy using the words.
Yeah.
So, yes, the bump rate, as measured by the DOT, that's involuntarily denied boarding. We don't have a seat for you on this aircraft. We're going to put you on another aircraft or give you a voucher or whatever happens afterwards. That is at an all-time low since they've been keeping records of that since 1995.
Wow.
So it is very infrequent. Now, what happened with UAL, the autopsy of what happened there, was an interesting lesson in actually corporate culture, not necessarily thuggish behavior.
I understand.
They were overbooked by one seat. They took care of that at the gate like they normally do. They put everybody in the plane. They had every seat full. The crew of 4 that needed those seats were only on that aircraft, entered that aircraft because their other flight had been canceled. And that's when the cascade of unfortunate events occurred. And, what really didn't happen with United was that, and this is a difference between them and, say, an airline like Alaska Airlines, is their crew did not feel empowered to change the situation. They were only allowed to offer $800, and no one wanted to take the $800 after they got on the aircraft. And that's when things started going downhill. Now, that is less likely to happen at an airline, which is our other winner, our legacy carrier, Legacy Airlines, which is Alaska, which has won 10 years in a row now, I believe.
That's amazing.
It is. And if you talk to those folks, you talk to anybody in that organization, they feel that empowerment of that frontline employee is the most important thing they can do. And so situations like we saw on United Airlines are less likely to happen on an airline like Alaska, because no one is going to get in trouble for offering $1,000 rather than the $800 limit at Alaska.
Right.
If it solves the problem, keeps people happy, great. You get kudos. You get a phone call from the CEO saying, great job. And that's a signal to everybody in the organization that doing the right thing for the passenger is the culture we've got. And that's some things that need to change in some of the airlines. Now, you saw that United immediately went to, we're going to allow our folks to offer $10,000.
Right.
I would like to see that $10,000 be paid. I hope it would be me, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, you and me both.
I can't see it happening, but that is a stratospheric, empowerment move. To really induce this, to make sure this never happens again.
Right.
And I doubt that they'll ever pay the $10,000, but it makes for great PR. And United Airlines happens to know what they're doing when it comes to public image management, believe it or not. And that $10,000 got a lot of headlines for them, but I don't think they'll ever pay that. Right. If it gets to $1,200 or $1,500, that'd probably be the max.
How, in your opinion, do situations like what happened with United actually affect the airline? I feel like we're in the world of short attention span theater. Everyone loves to be outraged for about 20 minutes, and then we all just go about our lives. Is that what happens?
Yeah, well, we're going to find out.
Yeah, right.
J.D. Power constantly samples in the airline space, so we're always constantly gathering sample. And so at our next mid-year update, we'll have some real hard news, although we'll know what's going on in the short term.
Yeah.
But here's the theory that we've seen happen at J.D. Power quite often, which is when this incident like this happens, you're going to take a hit to your image and your reputation, which means that people are less likely to book on your airline. For the $5, I'd rather go with American or Delta and avoid United because I saw this terrible video. That actually rolls up into a lot of money eventually. But what also happens is the people who take the flight, United flight, and say, hey, I got here on time, I like the ticket price, and my baggage didn't get lost. Well, what's the problem? Nobody got dragged off this aircraft. And that, they'll say, I had a great time. And that's basically, I believe, what we're going to find this time around. Now, the numbers will bear me out. That's currently our thinking because, we've been in this business since 1968.
Wow.
And that's usually what happens. And you're right. People do have eventually we're going to forget about Dr. Dow because everybody who's, the thousands of people taking a United Airline flight per day are actually reporting a good experience.
Yeah, of course.
And so that will fade over time unless something else happens.
Right. Yeah, it becomes a cascade effect after a while. The last question I really have for you before we wrap up today is, does Alaska Airlines, being the highest rank for 10 years in a row, what is the correlation between the size of the airline, meaning I think it's more manageable for them to keep that culture alive, compared to the much larger airlines such as Delta, which came in second place?
Well, when we look at high performers, people who have best practices, one of the things that they say over and over again is our customer service culture is in our DNA. I've heard that phrase from top performers probably half a dozen times just in the last year. So really, Alaska kind of started with that customer service philosophy, and that's why they're doing so well, even though they've gotten considerably bigger over the last 10 years. They're not nearly as big as United or American or Delta, as you noted. But American, United, and Delta didn't start with that in their DNA.
Right. And
it's much harder to put into your DNA after you're given birth. So if you talk to Alaska Airlines, this is our legacy. This is one of our core principles is we empower our employees to serve our customers. You talk to Ritz-Carlton. They have the same philosophy. That is what makes us successful. So I don't know if that really answers your question.
It sort of does, but I have to follow up now. Is there anything that you've gleaned in your years here with this on how to create that great corporate culture like Alaska or Ritz-Carlton?
Well, it starts at the top. It is your CFO or CEO mouthing platitudes, or they really believe it. I'll go back to Alaska Airlines. Their CEO flies coach on Alaska.
Right.
He sits next to people and tells them he's the CEO. And you can tell, and I know this for a fact, he brings back stories every time he takes a flight of what can be better, what was great. Most of the time I had, this flight attendant helped me out through this kind of thing. And, when I took an Alaska flight, that's why I love you guys. Right. And that's, thank goodness. But if something goes wrong or somebody has a problem, believe me, it starts with the CEO. He's heard that person sitting next to him for 2 or 3 or 4 hours, and he's going to take action. And so those kinds of things really inculcate that culture, trying to make a difference in a service culture with high-performing companies.
Great. I love it, and I also love the word inculcate. I try to use that as much as possible, too. All right, Michael, anything final words for you before I let you do some shameless plugs here?
No, other than, that it really is true. Of the 11,000 people that we interviewed about their airline experience, they're happier this year than they were last year.
Yeah. And I got to tell everybody out there, I'm finding the same thing. I'm finding that the whole experience from arriving at the airport to the time I get my bags has actually improved. I love complaining about it, but that's a lot more of a hobby than anything else. But when it comes down to it, I think the airlines are, in general, doing a great job, especially when I get those upgrades. And, it goes a long way to making me a happy guy. Michael, how can we find the folks at J.D. Power other than just going to jdpower.com? Any good thoughts for you?
Well, no, jdpower.com is the great place to start. You can see all the different kinds of studies that we do, from car surveys to aircraft to credit cards.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I want to thank everybody out there for listening to this show. I had a great time. Go to jdpower.com. Find me at Traveling Glenn online. And do me a favor, give the show to 2 of your friends, 2 of your coworkers, 2 of your colleagues, hey, even 2 of your enemies. I don't care. Let's continue to get the word out on the show. I want to thank you all for listening, and I will be back next week. That is unless I decide to try to get professionally bumped off of flights in the future to make that $10,000. Thanks for listening.
Thanks so much for listening to No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast, with your host, Glenn Hausman, online at rouse.media, on Twitter at Traveling Glenn, and on Facebook.com/Glenn.Hausman. We'll catch you next time.